out. Good.
I can't do that again. That was the
Probably was great. You're good. No.
Try it again. All right.
was
Well,
awesome.
thanks for tuning in, folks. For episode 3 of You Are The Product, a podcast by CrossFit Carolina Beach. Super exciting topic today, and we've got some special guests here with us. The topic for today was kind of born from what we discussed, Jordan and I, in episode 1, where we dove into some of the negative stigmas that surround CrossFit, some of the questions that the members and athletes face probably on a regular basis, and we got a lot of feedback from that, and we got a lot of feedback from the ladies of CrossFit Carolina Beach. And I guess to start with, what we can do is maybe start with Marissa, go around and introduce ourselves so we know who's here. And I've always wanted to do this. Scale of 1 to 10, how you feeling today? And question of the day is, how long have you been doing CrossFit?
My name is Marissa, and I am a 9 and a little hungry. And I've been doing CrossFit for it'll be 6 years this fall. So, yeah.
Whoa.
I know. I've never said that out loud. I don't think that's pretty.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to add one more piece of the question just for context to bring the ladies into the frame a little bit more. How long have you been married? That'll be. How have you been doing CrossFit? How long have you been married?
Do you want me to answer that then, too?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
She's not
March, February. Okay, thanks. 6 months.
Were you there?
It's bad. We're like, oh, hey, we've been married for another month.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Eileen. I'm a 10, and I've been doing CrossFit for 3.5 years, and I've been married for 10.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Let them know.
It's a long time.
You got a Broadway show coming up for your...
For our 11th. Yeah.
Poor Brian.
I am Fralene. I'm a 9. Yeah, probably a solid 9. I've been doing CrossFit. May will be 2 years. And September will be 5 years of marriage.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's really good. Meg, 10. I'm with all of you. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Been with CrossFit almost 3 years and been married 12 years.
Sweet.
Yeah, good to be here.
What about you, man?
I'm Jordan. This has got to be a 10. I feel like I've been crushing it all day today.
Oh, boy.
Like, seriously, it's been pretty good. And then I've been doing CrossFit since 2012, so I guess this will put me into my 8th year.
Wow.
And then I've been married for 6 months to Marissa.
What?
And I'm Bradley. I am also a 10. I was not a 10 until I got here, so energy is making me feel a lot better. But I've been doing CrossFit since September of 2017, so we're coming up on 2 years.
I was really insensitive whenever I put my addition onto the question and didn't keep you in
And
mind.
I've only been married for 0 days. Not married at all. But I do have a girlfriend.
Yeah, sure do. She's a stunner. Yep.
And she's awesome. And she's actually had some questions for us.
Oh,
that
cool.
we're into today. So from someone who's never done CrossFit and maybe still doesn't want to, but I think you guys will be able to bring some added perspective to that.
Definitely.
But yeah, so back to it, we got a lot of feedback from the ladies of CrossFit Carolina Beach, and probably the number one thing that I think that popped up, whether it was on our Facebook post that we did or just from the initial reaction from the podcast, was that CrossFit makes you either bulky or look manly. Ladies, what?
You know, I thought that when I woke up this morning. I looked in the mirror. I was like, man, I'm really looking
Right?
diesel and manly this morning.
Swole.
Diesel. God, Diesel. But, you know, when you hear stuff like that, because and this is where, you know, I'm humbled to be here. I don't have that same experience. Admittedly, I hear those
still
things.
doesn't look like a man.
Jeez. Jordan.
That just crushed me. 2 years of CrossFit.
That's what you get for missing that high five. Yeah.
That's what I get for missing the high five early. But, you know, humbled to be here. Don't have that same experience. Admittedly, I've heard those kind of things spoken, and looking forward to maybe learning how to better respond to those things in social settings. But when you hear that, I mean, I'll start with you, Marissa. What kind of comes to mind with your reaction?
I think it's something that I've been used to for a very long time. In middle school, there was a blog that a girl wrote where she identified and labeled every girl in the grade. And I was a soccer player, and I was called manly at the age of 12, where, thank you very much, I was also told that I looked like a young Jennifer Lopez, so those are very conflicting ideas.
That's a good one.
So that was something that I was very upset with at that age, and it doesn't really bother me. People will say things like, well, I want arms, but I don't want arms like Marissa's. And that's always an interesting, it just makes me think, why?
Right.
I mean, they're pretty cool. But yeah, no, it's not, it definitely hurts a little bit, but it's more coming from, I think, a lack of understanding than anything. There's a lot of fear attached to, like, what it takes to develop muscle to begin with. So I think it's just, I've learned to approach that they don't understand my perspective, so I'm just not going to assume anything about what they're saying right now. And usually it helps. I don't know.
I actually had the same fear when I started CrossFit. I ran a lot, I did spinning, like a lot of cardio type things, and my husband wanted to join first. And I actually was like, oh, I don't know, like I don't know if I want to lift all those weights, but I'll go anyways. Let's just see, because I'll try just about anything athletic related. And I didn't think about it again, like as soon as I walked in the door, because and I've told this story a little bit before, but we walked in during the middle of a class, and there were girls on pull-up bars, and it was obviously they were doing Metcon, and there were girls lifting weights, and I was like, wow, that looks really cool, and like that was it for me. So I think you need to experience it to understand what it's all about and what it can do to your body in positive ways. And so I still struggle. I get comments, and I struggle with those sometimes. But I also, similar to Marissa, come from a place of it's an opportunity to try and have a conversation with someone about what it means and what strength might look like on this person versus that person, because it doesn't look the same.
Right.
And just sort of, I guess, come from a positive place in terms of how it can benefit you.
For sure.
So.
For me, I kind of think of it twofold. First being before you ever come in the gym, and just kind of what your idea of manly, just the idea of having defined muscles. People don't realize what it takes to get those. You're not just going to get them just because you lift some weights. I mean, it really takes a lifestyle change, nutrition, lifting, cardio. I mean, the perfect, you can't just do a few bench presses and all of a sudden you're manly. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I feel like once you come in the gym and start seeing what it takes, you become proud of that. Mm-hmm. And you're excited to see the next new muscle, and you're excited to see the definition. And then when you start learning what those muscles can do for you, pull-ups or hitting new PRs, things like that, it's just a whole different mindset that you become excited about, and you want those muscles. And to me, it's not manly. To me, it's beautiful. It's feminine. It's strong. It's just a whole different mindset. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes me think of something that you and I had discussed before, because, like I said, admittedly, I've heard that from girls where they'll say, I don't want to do CrossFit because I'm going to look, bulky. And Jordan, your response was awesome when I, asked that question. You were like, well, good luck, because it's going to take a lot of hard work to actually get there. It's not like you're going to hop in a CrossFit gym and have muscles popping after 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There was an unfortunate occurrence in the social media world a couple weeks ago with Amanda Barnhart. If y'all saw any of that, Amanda Barnhart was a games competitor in 2018, and she is probably, I'm guessing, going to qualify for the games in 2019. Things changed this year, but and she was under a lot of scrutiny from a certain organization that will remain unnamed for, the organization said, we don't create bodies like this. And the only thing I could think was like, well, duh. because she works out for probably 4 or 5 hours a day,
Right.
5 days a week, and 2 hours a day another day a week, and probably takes a whole day off outside of that. So like, if you can dedicate in between 14 and 24 hours a week to training, then that might be a reality for you. And if you can do that and you wanted to do that, then your priorities would change.
Right.
So that was where the whole
Right.
like good luck, if that's a fear. But what do you got, Meg?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because people tend to picture games athletes when they hear the word CrossFit. And I think even the four of us sitting in a row is a really great example of just the differentiation in body type and shape and size that you get over time. Because you have Marissa, who's competing nationally, and Eileen's going hard for the Open right now, and Fraylene and I are maybe on the beginning of our journey. And so all of our bodies look very different, and we all have 4 very different goals for what we would like to do with them. So I probably was one of those people also, Eileen, that I thought, well, I don't know that I necessarily like the look of a CrossFit body. I was probably guilty of making a comment like that before. But I think what it comes down to is having boundaries in your life. Am I going to allow cultural expectations, familial expectations, community expectations determine the activities that I like? If my answer is yes, then I'm slave to everybody's expectations and personal preferences, really, especially when it comes to the world of aesthetics, the way people look. I decided no, I didn't want to be a slave to that. And however my body reflects the activity that I engage it in, that's how it's going to look.
Right.
And so I come from a place of just being peaceful about it and excited about what it can do. So therefore, your opinion doesn't matter. It feels
Yeah.
really, really good to be able to say
Empowering.
that, especially, it's not easy being a woman, you know? So there's a lot of shoulds.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed what you said about the familial pressure, because I think that that's a huge thing that people don't really take into consideration about all of your decisions. Whether it be, where are you going to get your education from whenever you graduate high school? If you choose to go to college, are you going to choose to go to college? That's a whole other conversation with your family. What do you choose to do in your free time? What's your extracurricular? What are your hobbies? And then, God forbid, you have some sort of health and wellness focus. I grew up the son of an organic farmer who also played soccer. So, like, for me to be physically active was something that was encouraged. But then you've got other people's whose family experiences are not supportive in the least of them. Like, they'll make changes and dive into something new that's really cool, and their family actually is like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And I think the familial pressure is a big thing.
Yeah, that's definitely real. I mean, even for me, it's like when I call home my dad, it's always, well, you better be careful. I don't know what y'all are doing in there, but and so I can only imagine that it's maybe even slightly worse, or maybe more intense on the women's side of things, whether it's for daughters or wives. I don't know if y'all have experienced that at all, or maybe it's in-laws. You never know.
Yeah.
And also, don't feel pressured to say anything about your family.
Like, well, I've been waiting to get this off my chest now. Yeah. I do want to interject and say that on this concept of like muscle and manliness and bulkiness, something that I've observed just in the coaching position is like this camaraderie that's developed amongst the women. So like I was just talking to Fraylene the other day, and she was like, I have this new quad muscle coming through, and she was like, we were both like so excited about it. And like some of the women in the one morning class the other day, they were doing pull-up work, and they were just like shouting at each other that their backs looked nice and like strong and muscular. And I was like, this is like revolutionary. Like, this is so cool. And it's women who've only been engaging in it for about a year, so they've gone through these struggles a lot in the last 6 months and still probably are. So just having that camaraderie with the women in the gym and knowing it's like, when I go out in public now, sometimes places I normally wouldn't feel safe going, I feel like pretty confident in my abilities, at least like stature wise, that I'm safe. So there's just a lot of layers to it, I think, of positivity that you realize once you start kind of digging in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was actually one perfect thing I want to read from Heather. That's a member at our gym, and she's super awesome. And she said, this was talking about just 6 days ago. Friday's 1 o'clock class was an amazing example of the freedom we have to tailor the class to our needs. Most days I'm going for 90 to 100% for that day, but I was tired. I had some anxiety about performing the open the very next day, but I came in for the camaraderie, the vibe, and the gentle push that I needed that day. We sailed through the workout slowly with laughs and some complaints, but we got it done. This is what women need to see about CrossFit. It's okay. We have a ton going on. We are human, even though we sometimes feel superhuman in our workout accomplishments. Would love to see XFIT move into the school system a bit more to encourage young ladies that they are strong, beautiful, and confident. I just wanted to give Heather a voice in this, and it was like 100% supporting what you were saying there. And the support is cool.
Yep. Yeah.
Have you felt supported?
Have we felt supported?
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. In the gym or outside?
Yeah, in the gym and outside too. Like so we'll say like in the gym first, like the group structure is cool, it's fun, coaching is awesome and fun and supportive too. But I think so we've got these quarterly goal review sessions where we sit down and we say, what did you accomplish over the past 3 months? What do you want to accomplish in the next 3 months? And it helps us drive the plan. And one of my favorite questions is, who's been most supportive of you outside of the gym? And that could be a fun question here.
You want to go? Who wants to go first?
I have a good answer
Yours
for
is
that
awesome.
one. Yeah. My best friend back home, Chrissy, she actually pushed me for a while to get into CrossFit, and I was terrified. And finally started, and so it's been like this constant. She pushes me, I push her. She's extremely good at all of it, but her gymnastic stuff is really good. And I'm starting to learn that I'm more of a weightlifter. And so it's interesting to see, she's been doing it for like 5 years, and I'm starting to get close to her weights, but like she can kill it on handstand push-ups and handstand walks and pull-ups and all these things that I know I'll get to one day, but it's going to take a while, you know. So, but it's really cool after every class, just about we're constantly texting and sending each other, you know, this is what we did today, and this is what I, you know, was it yesterday? I got toes to bar for the first time. First person I texted was Chrissy. Said I got 30 toes to bar today. I went from 0 to 30.
That's amazing.
Not linked, but I mean, still 30 in one session. I was like, yes. And
After class.
she was the first person I texted, you know, I mean, because she's the person that's like, yes, you can do this. If you ever, you know, if I'm ever doubting myself, she's the one telling me, no, you've got this, you've got this.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really good.
What was the original?
Someone outside the gym who's
Support.
Yeah.
Well, I got one similar to Fraylene's, my sister.
Yeah.
She does CrossFit up in Boston. We started about the same time. We've always done similar, like we all both got into running a lot in the same time, and so we tend to do the same activities. I think we share a brain sometimes, to be honest. But very similar in that, like, most of our texts now surround either nutrition or CrossFit in some way. And then, like, some text about our kids doing something funny. But, like, it's a lot of it's about that. And what did she do today? And what are we celebrating her accomplishments and mine? And it's, it's
It adds like another dynamic to like family relationships where a lot of times you just feel like you're catching up or you're just trying to keep the conversation going, and it's, I don't know. My mom, I mean, you're an obvious answer, but I'm gonna give my attention to my mom because she has been like, you know, the biggest support my whole life. And when I started weightlifting, she was at my first nationals meet. She was like always reposting videos, even though she didn't know how to do it. And she recently joined a CrossFit gym 3 weeks ago after years of gentle pushing and just fear of not being strong enough to do it, to walk in there, not being fit enough. And she went in one day just was inspired. Like I don't know, the Lord spoke to her. She went in there, she met with the people, started the next day, and is obsessed. Obsessed. She sends us emails every day reviewing what she's done. The best text message I got from her the other day was like ... coach says I have raw talent. And I'm like, this is this woman who's 56 years old. She's doing her first CrossFit Open. She's like, I lapped a newbie in class the other day on a bear crawl. She's just like, she's like, awesome. And it's cool because she's also a chemist in a very male dominant company, and she is way, like, in the last few weeks, the way she's handled herself, or she's talked about how meetings have went, is a complete shift from how it was before. And she's able to be, like, silly like she normally is, but not to feel like it's unprofessional, but rather that's just part of my personality. Or she's able to kind of assert herself a little bit differently. So it's pretty cool to see, to have that support, and now to be able to support her in a way that, like, as a kid, you kind of want to be able to do for your mom. You know.
It's definitely been an incredible process for the two of us over the past 3 weeks. It's given us another layer, because we had another comment from one of the gym members, Selena, where she said it changed my husband and I's marriage, where we have something else to talk about besides kids, money, and what's for dinner. And I was like, wow, I actually wouldn't be married right now if it wasn't for CrossFit. But that's a whole other thing, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there in the world that can relate with that. But to be able to have another layer now where we can actually talk about my mother-in-law and just have, like, this deeper relationship. I can't wait to go back home now, because it's like there's going to be even more to bond over. I'm super lucky to have super cool in-laws anyway, but it's so like a whole other step.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people in the gym, obviously so supportive. You can't walk in and not feel better by the time you walk out. But I grew up in a really athletic family. Physically, we were always doing something. My dad coached, my mom coached. My dad, I mean, I could have been a boy or a girl, it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, we did the same things. And so probably my dad, in the way he raised me, set me up to love CrossFit. I mean, there's no way my genes, I don't think, could not like CrossFit. And you kind of find as you go from being a little girl, you're like, what am I going to be? Will I get married? Will I have a family? All these questions, like the world's wide open. And then you make that first decision and it gets a little narrower. And then you make the next where maybe you get married and it gets a little narrower and narrower. Good commitments, but I'm saying your world gets a little narrower. And with that, each layer that you're adding are, I guess, more predestined expectations or in sacrifices, and they're good and you're happy to do them. But CrossFit for me is like coming home. It's like the foundation of who I am. And so I'm really thankful to have that. You know, I walk in the door and it's like, oh, there's Meg again. Yep. All right, let's go get chalky, you know, let's go do something new. Let's try something new. Let's be adventurous. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What is it about the culture? Maybe it's unique to CrossFit Carolina Beach or CrossFit that allows the camaraderie that you guys have to exist. Because I think that's where, talking to my girlfriend, she's a little bit like worried about fitting in if she was to join. You know, I'm super skinny and I'm not strong, and you know, I brought her to the Open and she was in the corner, you know, with her phone, and I was like, you know, but I think over time, and I've seen that happen within our walls, it's like so easy that you guys click and come together, and there's not the separation that you may see in other kind of social environments.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I'm going to do you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. There is something about the way that the workouts and the classes are set up that I think kind of inspires at least conversation. I will say, and that I think our community is pretty special in that fact. It's like a super welcoming community. People are introducing themselves. Somebody's new. Like half the time I'm like, do I teach them how to do it, or am I let that person, like, because they're doing a great job helping, or so there's like this built-in desire to have somebody else feel the same way about this and to feel as good as you do because of this. and you want to like kind of like gently walk that person through that journey. And I think that there's a lot of pretty cool things and connections that happen along that way. And that's just been something that I've observed in our community a lot, is everybody just wants one another to feel that same like sensation of like, you come in as a 4, not feeling great, like tired, super stressed out, and you leave like a 7. And that's just what we just want that for each other. Like if somebody's like, I'm a 3 today, everybody's like, oh. Like, so.
You must be having a rough day.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think I can remember feeling intimidated before I came in the first time too, and that went away right away because everyone was so friendly. But I try and remember that when someone relatively new comes in too, because I still remember how it felt. I mean, it's scary to walk into a gym and equipment you haven't used before, lingo you're not familiar with, all those things. No matter how many smiling people there are, it's just still scary to walk through the door. So I try and remember that and just, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Be supportive of whoever that person is. Introduce yourself. This really small things, but anything you can do to help make that person feel welcome. There aren't any labels in there. You're not a mom or a full-time worker or whatever. You're working out like everyone else, and so it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. You're just all here to work out.
I think my favorite question today, whenever I came into this recording studio, was, I'm sorry, I honestly don't know what you do for a living. and it was amongst the ladies, but it was just so awesome that like that doesn't matter. Excellent. I love that.
Yeah. And I think that is, I will say, special because I've been to quite a few, I've been a member to many CrossFit gyms, I've lived in different areas, and there's a level of humor and ability to laugh at yourself that we, I think, encourage, which makes, if you do something silly or wrong, if you will, which we do daily, multiple times, you're able to kind of get over that, and that fear of looking silly kind of dissipates. And other gyms where it would be like, he's a neurologist, or he or she does this or that, like, I don't think I've ever engaged in
Really?
like,
What's he dead?
I know, yeah, like they're like, like we're just like sweet, like it's like,
Cool story.
yeah, it's just different, I don't know, priorities.
Well, it came to my mind just because I remember my own first time coming in and the drive over to the gym, just being terrified, and walking in, the first person I saw was Marissa, and I was like, crap. Because you're very fit, and it was just like, man, this is, what am I doing? I'm not going to fit in here. And I can only imagine that as a girl going into that same environment. I mean, I've thought about that many times. Like, even for me, as scared as I was, what's that like if I was to try to get my mom to go, or if I had a sister, and those kind of things. So I don't know if y'all had similar experiences with your first time coming in. Are all y'all have always been with CrossFit Carolina Beach, or was there other experiences
In
along
other
the way?
gyms?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have there been other gyms?
There have been many other gyms, Bradley, but none as good as CrossFit.
Oh, Meg.
That's so not like me, guys.
I don't know.
Oh, it's awesome.
We didn't pay her.
No.
I'm blushing hard
Yeah.
right now.
There have been, and I've done boot camps and spin classes, and I tried bar once, guys. Me on the bar, can you imagine? Like the actual pretty bar, not the swinging bar. All sorts of different things. I tried working out at home, like the whole beach body thing. So many. And I've talked at length with Jordan about this. The fitness world at large leaves much to be desired. You can, for instance, your girlfriend, you can go into one of those places undetected, absolutely. But you're still faced with the choice, what do I program? Where do I start? Are people looking at me? What are my results? How do I measure this? I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty in those other areas. And even if you go to a class that's step class, or who knows, there's a million trillion classes out there. I don't know the moves. I can't dance. That's a problem. Zumba is, I would rather, there's risk. What I'm saying is there's risk wherever you go. But at a place like CrossFit, and this is standard, any gym you walk into for a female, the movements are always the same. And there's always a bell hanging on the end of the bars, which we call the rig. And if you do the best you've ever done that day, you ring the bell. And that's across the board. There's bells in every other CrossFit gym I've been in so far. I'm sure maybe one, there's an outlier. But the ones I've been in. And I've always been very welcomed. And I've always known what they've meant when they used the terminology. And so if you're adverse to risk, I think sometimes CrossFit is actually a safer bet in that way.
Yeah.
So once you get through those first couple months of being sore in maybe a way that you're not accustomed to, and you learn some of the terminology, you're set for going anywhere you want in the world now, guys. The world. That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. And having a clue, what you're going to do. And not having to program. The workout's on the wall. It is what it is. Everybody's doing that workout.
Yep.
And that, I think, is a structural camaraderie that is not present in any other type of gym.
Yep.
So you already have that in common.
Definitely.
And that's awesome. And so for Fraylene, you're probably more closely familiar with what those early stages feel like, being the youngest person in the group for membership purposes.
Right.
So what was some of that like for you, from where you had came from and transitioning from what seemed to be really great into something that might have been even better than you could have imagined it could have been?
The first thing I think I know, everyone there, I remember my first day, and I remember Jennifer Sullivan, and she was so nice and showed me where everything was, and at the end of the class she was like, I am so sorry, I just feel like I haven't been that welcoming, and I was like, oh no, like, you spoke to me and you told me where the bars were, and you told me this and this, like, you were wonderful. No, it was great. I remember that because it stood out to me that everyone in that class at the time I was doing the 7 o'clock, and everyone there was so nice and just wanted to help me and wanted to show me where things were. And it was either Joel or Marissa teaching, and they make a point to come over, and if it's something that you've maybe never seen before, because I had worked out a lot but not doing Olympic lifts, so that was brand new, and they explain it very well and go through it step by step, and so that was huge. But then the programming itself, like the progressions into things, I'd never experienced anything like that, where how we do normally, like we may do a 1 rep max on something, and then for the next couple weeks we work on that, and build up and do different percentages. We may add bands to it. We may all these different things. That to me is huge. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest difference between, and I assume it's at all CrossFit gyms. I don't know. I just know our gym, but I hope it's at all of them. But it's not been at any other gym, even when I had trainers. I mean, they do programming, but it's not built layers. You know what I mean? Like, that was huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to have a plan, and I think that's a confusing piece for people when they're doing research, because it's constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity, which is really, even Greg Glassman, the guy who started CrossFit, is like, that's the easiest way for me to explain to you what it is that we do, but honestly what you need to do is come with me. I'm going to be there at 12 tomorrow. Would you like to show up? Because the variety piece is really confusing to people, because they're like, whoa, she's talking about progressing, but we're talking about constantly varied, so how does that make sense? And I think the plan is something that, and like you were saying too, that all the information in the world is on Google. If you want to know how to work out and be really, really good at it, you can find it on Google. It takes a lot of work, and I think that's a really, really cool thing that happens. And I would say we can give all CrossFit gyms credit for having some sort of plan. Some of them plan more thoroughly than others, but that's if people are moving, that's the important part.
I'd say we're pretty lucky at Carolina Beach with you two, and we've alluded to this before, just the sustainability of the programming that we have, along with that camaraderie, is what keeps us coming back. Whereas whether it was the Beachbody or just your regular Globo gym, I could put in 3 months, but then you're done with that program, and it's like, what now? Do I need to do that all over again? And so this finally was something that was sustainable. I can see it being forever. So I'm sure that women face the same kind of question, or, you know, because they're doing those ab video. I don't know.
Yeah.
We get like 1,000 trillion less calories to do it.
Yeah.
In Globo Gym.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I think one thing that's also that I just thought of was I played team sports growing up, so my coach always had a plan. I always knew, like, this is what I was doing at practice that day. And then as soon as that identity was no longer there, I was no longer an athlete, I had to find something to do and to feed, like, that energy that I always had an outlet for. And oh Lord, college was rough. I went over to club soccer, but I was trying to do things in the off season. I tried P90X. I was like, oh my God, I have to wall sit for 3 minutes. Like, or it was terrible. Or I would try to go into the gym, and the weights were scary because there was like all these guys, and I've seen them in the cafeteria only eating chicken breasts for 6 months. And so there was like there was no ability for me to like identify if this is going to be something that's sustainable. And there was nothing that was holding me to want to come back. And CrossFit was like, I mean, I thought I was a person that was dedicated to fitness and wellness, but apparently I wasn't, because I couldn't hold on to anything. It would last a week, 2 weeks maybe, if I was lucky. And it wasn't until I like stepped into a CrossFit gym, and it was like this like this sigh of relief, and I didn't have to. That was one less decision that I had to make that day, and every day I'm grateful for that. And yeah, like for like women, like my God. Think of all the decisions that, especially like as mothers, that you have to make, not even for yourself, but you have like small little minions like asking you 1,000,001 questions. And this is one thing where you can come in and you might have to make a decision about like what range of the percentage you want to do, but it's all out there for you. And I think that is like big.
I think that's huge. That's the one time I say that I can go for an hour, literally not think about anything else except that weight I'm lifting or that bar I'm hanging on. There's no, what are we having for dinner? There's no, what payments at work need to get out, or who's out sick, or who's, there's absolutely nothing. I mean, it's very similar to yoga, I think, in just that complete for an hour.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's big.
Yeah, I mean, it really is therapy for sure, because even when it's super hard, it's like going into that dark place is actually removing all the other crud that's distracting you throughout the day. Kind of to switch topics a little bit, something that popped into my head. I was curious if you guys had ever had kind of a low point in your journey through CrossFit. Maybe it was just a singular day in the gym that was particularly hard, or something going on in the personal life but somehow you've pushed through that and kept coming back. I don't know if there was anything that comes to mind. I will share mine really quick. It was a single day, and I was in a mood.
Oh,
I don't even know what it was.
I'm interested to see what day it was.
But, and I can't even remember the workout, but I was kind of just in my head, almost like, hate to admit, like almost like tears. But Marissa, you came up to me and you're like, screw the time cap, you're going to finish.
I remember this. It was like squat cleans or something.
Yeah, something like I went probably too heavy for what I needed to be at, and I was there probably 7 minutes after everybody was done. But of course, everybody stayed, cheered me on, and it was like actually the best day I ever had. I was like, I'll always be loyal to this place.
Yeah.
Went from an all-time low to a...
Yeah, pretty quickly. So those are always interesting stories to share.
I thought you were going to tell your story about getting punked by April Zilg on the single-arm farmer carries.
Oh, that was... dude.
Shout out to April Zilg.
Jordan with the
I got
shout-outs.
crushed that day, too. That was early on.
That was like your second day, so...
Yeah, didn't even know about chalk. And Jordan's in the corner
That's
like,
true.
get this kid some chalk.
Forgot about that.
What's chalk? I was like, I can't hold dang bars. So that was the second worst day. Yeah. But since then, we've gotten stronger. Farmers carries aren't so bad.
There we go. It's awesome. Does anybody want to say?
Eileen, you got some low days to... Or,
I got plenty.
Period.
The day Meg tried to hug her.
Oh my God. She's like stiff
I
armed.
didn't even think of that one. Well, I wasn't in a good place at the time. I mean, yeah, I've had, I've had plenty of low days when I'm working out. Either I already know I don't feel good when I'm coming into the gym, and then sometimes I, push through the workout in a way maybe I shouldn't have, given how I was feeling mentally to begin with, and end up sort of feeling more frustrated for the short term. You know what I mean? But it's I don't know. I think, at least as of the past year, when I have those bad workouts now, for whatever reason, there's always something you can take away from it. In fact, there's probably more things you can take away from it from a good workout. And so I try very much to think about what those things are, and also just remind myself that I still have the privilege of being able to leave my house and go work out today for an hour and a half, and that's a blessing. So I try, at least, like I said, in the short term, I've tried to find the good in even those low points, because there's a lot in there.
For sure. Well, I think for me it was like, and you struggle with this with anything sometimes, but like inevitably it's going to be hard. Like these workouts that we do are tough, and so I think for people that are looking into CrossFit, that inevitability is tough to overcome sometimes. And in that moment that I described, it was one of those moments where I was like, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I here?
Yeah.
7 minutes later, I felt a million times better.
Yeah.
It's just like, that right there is what I'm training my mind to, which is going to allow me to be stronger outside of the gym. So
Yeah. There's definitely like a gratitude factor in those moments for sure. Just like you said, like you're able to extract a lot more goodness out of those days. And I think the biggest breakthroughs that I've had as an adult came from either a time where I was injured and I wasn't able to move, not in the way that I wanted to, or if I was something was going on, stress, and I wasn't able to work out in the capacity that I wanted to. And you learn a lot about yourself trying to navigate those waters. And just seeing like people recognize that you're not yourself or things aren't right. And you might not want to you don't talk to me if I'm about to cry, because it's not going to be great for anyone. But just knowing that somebody acknowledges and is present if you need them. And that's been a big difference maker versus in college, if like my boyfriend broke up with me and I'm running on the treadmill, just like tears, and I could wipe out at any moment and nobody will say a thing to you. And like nobody sees that girl, she's not crying, she didn't just fall off the treadmill. Like it's a different state of affairs. But yeah, there's a lot of shining moments that come through all that kind of stuff for sure.
For sure.
What's the lull like for you?
September last year was a little.
Yeah.
We had a vacation planned. We got back the day after the hurricane, so then we were out of power and everything for the next week. And then
Shout out to Hurricane Florence.
Yes. Then quarter end at work, so it just was a time where I couldn't get there like I wanted to. And it really does kind of go away quickly. Like if you spend a lot of time, 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, it doesn't seem like that much. It's huge. I mean, you come back and you're back sort of like you had never done it before. So, but I feel like ever since then, that was here we go. I'm not going to let this be another try it for a while, give it up. Like that was the turning point for me. So I feel like October on has just been smooth.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because it's amazing how 2 weeks can turn into 2 months, into 2 years of, oh crap, I haven't been working out like I used to. Even though you may consider yourself someone who is passionate about fitness. So,
Yep.
But again, that's another plus I think that you have, that there was probably the community, probably some other factors that helped you kind of get back in there versus having to be like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and sit in the corner or on the treadmill or the bike or whatever. So
Yeah, and God forbid you have to have the conversation with yourself the entire time. You know what I mean? Like I think that's such a huge thing versus being able to have I know Marissa and Meg are vibing on something that has absolutely nothing to do with the gym right now. This professional development thing for each of them, although completely different areas, is giving them something to talk about outside of the gym. I don't know if y'all have, I mean, I know that y'all have friends, but
Just a couple.
but
A couple.
just my sister in Boston.
Sister and Brian. That's it. My kids.
But to be able to have those other things too, that bolsters what the value is in not only your membership, but in your physicality and your emotional well-being too. Because the support, like I feel like a lot of times when we say support, we're talking about like the community at large coming together when you're trying to overcome some physical barrier, i.e. getting stronger, getting faster, breathing better, all of those things, but also too having that support outside of the gym. The things that you can relate to with people just grow, because it's almost like for soldiers where they struggle together and they emerge with this camaraderie that might not have existed before. And I feel like I see that same type of emotion. I don't know what it means to be a soldier in battle, and I also don't know what it means to be a female in a CrossFit gym, but what I see is very similar. For those to be able to vibe. I think it's cool.
Yep.
Meg, what about you?
I've been racking my brain, Bradley. I don't think there was one worst day. I did get hurt. I was out 4 months. That was tough. But I think the bad days, plural, are the ones where I lose sight of what I'm doing. And it becomes about everybody else but me, about my own journey. So bad days include comparison. They include pushing my body in a way that may be hormonally or emotionally or whatever, relationally, I'm wiped.
Yep.
But I still hold this expectation for myself, and it's bogus. I mean, it really is. So when you talk about battle or whatever, it is the mind. CrossFit is totally a battle of the mind, and people don't understand that, because when you walk into a CrossFit gym, there are people battling, but the battle looks different for every single person. You can have a 250-pound woman doing her first push-up or whatever next to somebody doing 15 toes to bar in a row. Like, the battle is different for every single person. And so I think that when you start to overcome that psychological limitation and you take a chance at something new, you start to see the differences in yourself, I guess. So the bad days are when I forget that this is a personal journey, and I start to look in all those other places, I guess.
Yeah.
And that can go to a dark place, if you're not careful.
For sure.
I think that's incredibly beautiful, and the only thing that I can think about whenever I hear that is there's a word that's maybe not used frequently enough amongst us, and it's sonder, S-O-N-D-E-R, and sonder is another layer past empathy, where I can totally recognize that the journey that you're going on is just as crazy and just as action-packed and just as confusing as the journey that I'm on. And I think that's something, it's like, when people say empathy, it feels like this blanket statement, but I really feel like what happens in the gym is sonder. Like, people are, like, you really understand that, like, there's someone who's freaking amazing and they're still battling something, and there's someone who is extremely unfit and they're battling a different thing, but it's equal. And I think that's like cold chills.
Big, yeah. There, just this past weekend, I have a coach, and it was interesting because as a coach myself, and like in a slightly different perspective than these ladies, I don't think about like the struggle as much as I witness like our members go through in their workouts and going into that place like Meg talks about. And then this weekend I had like one of those days myself, and it really took a lot of like, my coach said like she let me be, and she was like, there was a battle going on and I had to let it just happen. And I was so grateful for that space to be able to do that and to fail a million times. And it was one of the first times where I didn't perform the way that I wanted to and the expectation I had set for myself. But I felt so much like gratitude for coming out of like that 2-hour window where it felt like it was like the cliffs of Mordor, and I'm like going after the ring and like all this craziness. I know, Lord of the Rings reference. Eileen's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. I was like, you could at least like eye contact, let me know. And it made me feel a lot more connected to everybody this week, just kind of see them go through their workouts, just knowing that like I myself had gone through that and like what it feels like, and different things are going on for different people, but it's going to help in life overall to some degree.
And that was like the lowest low you felt in a good while?
Yeah, for sure, in a long time.
You had the biggest PR
Yeah.
I
had a very big breakthrough
2 days later.
Yeah. We don't need to get like too crazy, but like I didn't get a chance to nerd out with Meg about this too much, but like I had like sat back and like had like it was almost like I had a therapy session, and I had identified all of these behavior patterns that I've been doing since I was a child, and my body language was like I was like 10 again, and then I had to like do like it was crazy. It was really intense, and then the next day I came in and I had no expectations and I didn't even think about what I was doing, and it went up. It went up. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it was cool. Sorry, took a little derail there.
No, I love it.
But I think that's such a good point, because there's just like these natural defenses that we have up every single day that just get us through our routine and kind of like survival mode or whatever. But until you're so physically exhausted that you kind of have to face that part of yourself, and that's what exercise is, and it bleeds into every other area of life. Like, if you just get over that, well, that applies to work, it applies to my kid who won't sleep, it applies to just any sort of discipline, so I don't think there's any other form of, that may be a big stretch, sorry, politically correct, there may not be, in my opinion, another form of physical exertion, I guess, that can bring you to that place that I've experienced, Sorry, but Zumba doesn't do that for me. It doesn't align everything for me. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
I've found that meditation is the only thing for me that actually gives me the same result. And what's funny is when I get better at meditating, I actually get better at working out harder. And when I get better at working out harder, I also actually get better at meditating.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I just got into this meditation thing like 4 months ago.
Yeah,
Oh,
when you say
wow.
meditate, yeah. I had this conversation with somebody today, and she was like, oh, I don't meditate. And I was like, girl, I meditate for 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
That's the same
And
girl
it's usually
who-
me sitting there and being like, oh, I gotta, go, like, come here. Oh, I gotta go make this. Nope, come back to here.
Yeah.
And it's like everything in life. Like,
That's
you're
probably
constantly...
the same girl who 5 years ago said, girl, I don't do CrossFit.
Yeah, well, here we are. Yeah. No, but it is true, and just like what Meg's saying about all that kind of stuff, the behavior patterns and defense mechanisms, and I remember sitting there and it was me finishing a workout and realizing that the same way I was holding myself was the same way that, like, my first big job out of college, when I got my first, like, not negative but constructive form of feedback, and I took it so personally and I was so upset with my performance, and it was like complete exact expression. One was me missing a snatch, one was me like 3 weeks into a job not performing to the expectation I set. So and I was able to handle it in a way that my day wasn't bad. I didn't ruin my whole day feeling that way. So yeah, I don't know.
It's like practiced failures in a safe place
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else that can build up the calluses like that.
That's-
like controlled failure in a safe place.
Put it on a
I
billboard.
know, I'm like, oh gosh, that was really good.
Pictures going in my room.
I'm gonna need what percent should I?
I know, yeah, for that one.
For posters.
I can design it.
Yeah.
So we can make that happen. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That was a good one.
Yeah, there's definitely a compound effect of something I tell myself every day is just keep showing up. Just keep showing up like that, because it's always something. There's always like an excuse, and every day is just dude, just keep showing up. It doesn't happen every day, but it's like, let's hit that minimum of 3, and then over, you know, it's funny, like, what you'll hear as far as, like, the compliments, like, dude, you look good or whatever, and I'm sure you'll hear the same thing. It's like, I didn't just get there because I thought of it. I showed up over the course of 2 years, you know, across, you know, it's like, if you want something, if you want that body, like, are you willing to do what it takes to get it? And we've got this awesome environment where you can create that. So, and that kind of leads me into a little bit of maybe, like, let's finish on our best moment that we've had in CrossFit, or our high point. For me, it was actually this past weekend. Because last year, the Open humbled me greatly. And I let work and distractions kind of get in the way. I didn't make it to the Saturday events. Felt like I let my team down last year, and it would be like me and Jordan one-on-one and just getting destroyed. And this year, Saturday, I was there. I had a game plan, and I don't feel like I could have done any better. I felt the most in control of a workout that I've ever felt. Marissa, Jordan know, like, most days I'm sprawled out after the workout, just dead. And I was tired. I pushed it, you know, to the limit, but it was like just having that plan and feeling in control compared to where I was last year this time. It was like, dude, the progress that I've made, it's amazing. So, yeah.
For sure. It's awesome. Do you want to go with that? Are you still thinking? Okay. Okay. My best day. Can I give you my top 3?
Yeah.
And make them quick? Okay.
Take
First,
your time.
all right. My life has been, and this took some reflection today, and I was a little grumpy, but I was thinking about CrossFit, and, like, when people ask what I do for a living, and they ask what I went to school for, and I tell them, and then I tell them what I do. I studied French and urban studies. I was going to work for nonprofits, and they're like, "Oh, and you do this now," and I'm like, "Mm-hmm," and I can't think of another way that my life has been opened up in such a broad realm, quite like going into this field and working in a CrossFit gym. Like what Meg said about, like, your world kind of opens up a little bit, because you do make these decisions in life. Like, you get married, you move here, you do this, and your world becomes more routine, which is fine and it's healthy and that promotes other good things in life. But I am continuously, like, there's new directions that I'm going in my career. There's all of these different paths are happening, and it's only because I made a decision to go in and to do burpees at 6 o'clock in the morning one day many years ago. So that's the first thing. The second thing was just knowing that there's always something I didn't think that I was able to do, and then I do it. So, like, this past weekend, I lifted a weight that, like, I dreamt about, and I always was like, well, this girl's lifted it, and she's an Olympian, so I'll never be able to do that. And I did it, and I'm still slightly in shock. But that was, like, because then it's like, I can do anything. I'm like, I'm going to talk to this person, da-da-da. Like, you just, like, you have, like, the swag, like, there's somebody following you playing music. And also, I met my husband at a CrossFit gym, so that was a pretty up there event.
Pretty up there.
That's a story for another time, though. Yeah.
It's a good story. I've heard that story.
It's funny. It's a funny one.
Episode 4.
Yeah.
How it all began.
Yeah. God.
I'm really struggling to pick one high point because I have, like, I don't know, 30 swirling in my head. But I think the common theme is probably all of those times I've, like, fought and failed and fought and failed and fought and failed over and over and over until I actually finally got something. So was it my first muscle up or snatching more than I'd ever, done before, and all those things that were, like, mentally so hard to figure out, as well as obviously technically.
Mm-hmm.
But usually in the end, it's more your brain that's holding you back than your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anytime I think I've crossed any of those barriers, and there's been a lot of them, has been a high point, because you prove to yourself you can do it. You can fail 100 times, and 101 you'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. It's like that video of the little girl that's, like, jumping on the box.
Yeah.
That was, like,
That
squirrel, like, that
video.
viral
Yes.
video.
Yes.
I know. I'm like, listen, this is the real deal. Yep.
I would say just what it's done for my confidence in life in general. I mean, things that I want to do now. I do, or at least attempt to do, instead of shying away. I'm not scared to ask people for things that I want or feel like I deserve or need. And I think that's somewhat of a common theme for women a lot of times, of thinking maybe we do deserve something or we should be able to do something, but kind of scared to put ourselves out there and go for it and ask. And this has made me ask, or at least attempt to do things that maybe before I wouldn't. And it's just been a confidence booster all around.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Watching just Fraleen's this year has been like really, really cool. To watch her grow and get so strong, and it's just
Putting up some numbers, girl.
yeah, it's been a really cool. It's been a cool to watch from the sidelines and be like, "Oh, Fralene," and like don't embarrass her too much. Yeah.
I don't have a best day. Probably my first group class would be up there when I realized there were no mirrors on the wall. That my athletic ability had nothing to do with what I was wearing that day or what I looked like. That I got to eat more calories because I am eating now for performance versus how I look. That there were people doing amazing things with their bodies and not just being told whether or not it made the body look good. And that, for me, my friends, was just like the chains falling off for me. So probably that first group class I had in CrossFit, and from there on it's every time you overcome something you've really been working on. So I think that would just be the general theme, is just letting all that stuff fall off, and that there's actually a place where women can go where that happens for real.
Yep.
It's not a unicorn gym, you guys. There's this thing called CrossFit.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Jordan, is there anything else that we wanted to touch on?
Thank you. I mean, this is, I know for me, undoubtedly the best day that I've had was the first time I met Marissa. The second best day was when she said she was moving from Philadelphia to Asheville, because when I met her, she didn't even live in the same town as me. And then the third, well, actually, I guess the actual best day was our wedding day, whenever I looked and realized how many people from the CrossFit community were actually making up the congregation. And it was just like everybody, even if they didn't know each other, automatically had a common theme that they could vibe on. And it was just an amazing experience. And no doubt the fourth is today, right now, because I often get lost in my own thoughts about how can I do something meaningful? How can I create something that's going to add value? How can I put something out there that's going to make someone consider a change that might actually be good for them? And so far, I don't know if this is my magnus opum, but having you ladies here right now is like, this is just absolutely incredible for me, and I can't thank you all enough for being at our gym and here right now to talk about everything that you're talking about. And Bradley, thank you for having the idea to start the whole thing to begin with, because this wouldn't have happened without you too. So this is really, really special for me, and this is going with me forever, for sure.
That's awesome. Definitely humbling for sure to be here as well. Another question I've had is about the name of the podcast, You Are The Product, and I got that from I guess it was the original CrossFit documentary, Every Second Counts. And at the end, Greg Glassman is talking to Jason Khalifa, I think. He had won the CrossFit Games, and he just looked at him and was like, "You're the product." And it just kind of stuck with me that with what we've got going at CrossFit Carolina Beach, it's not our equipment, it's not the paint on the walls, all the bells and whistles, it's our members. You are the product of, what we're, I almost get emotional just talking about it, but you guys are the product of what we've, got at CrossFit Carolina Beach, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. But let's end it there.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Trent and Hourglass Studios. Thank you for letting us use this space to do this, because I know that we don't have the resources to do it on our own. And thank you, Tommy, the video guy. Do you have a video
New daddy.
name? For no, Tommy the video guy.
That's good enough.
But yeah, sweet.
It's awesome. All right. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Till next time. Peace.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
want to
That's
give me a
cool.
second to readjust some stuff? You want to give me a second? This is super dark.
Where is the
Yeah, but I look better this way.